everybody. My name is Kurt Pankow, and I'm going to be giving a little presentation here. This is called Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker was a Slytherin, which was the clickbaitiest title that I could come up with, and thank you all for falling for it. We're going to be talking about team dynamics in popular fiction. A lot of what we're going to be going over is movies. There'll be some touch on books as well, with the idea that this is something that you could use to help inform your own creative works. Uh, we are. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. We're in Swooperton B. If you have questions, feel free to post them there. I do have a lot to cover, and so I'm going to try to focus on questions at the end. So, with that, couple of quick disclaimers. First, this is based on my own observations. I was going to say that this is based on my own scholarship, but I don't think they make scare quotes big enough to put around that word. So I have some professionally published pieces, but I am not an academic. So just keep in mind, I have about as much authority as like a YouTube essayist. So uh, so yeah, it's entirely I'm making this up. Second, I am using Harry Potter for some of the illustrations, amongst others, but it is prominent enough that it got into the title. And I did just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, Harry Potter is a big cultural touchstone that makes it useful for discussions like this. But, Rowling has obviously said some very hurtful things lately. So just, I don't want you to think that I am endorsing her views about trans women. So again, just want to acknowledge that. Cool. So I spend a lot of time thinking about story structure and character dynamics and that sort of thing. And this presentation ultimately started with a question around the movie Ghostbusters, a cherished gem from my youth. Um, Nobody in that movie has a character arc. And storytelling 101 is if you want to have a good story, then you need a good character arc for your main character. But this is a movie that doesn't really have a main character, and none of the three protagonists have arcs. So how is it still good? So my thesis that I'm going to be talking around and kind of building towards is that there are situations where you can have a story about a team where the team is the hero. Individuals may not go on an arc or a journey, but the entire team does. And that this arc can be broken up in a couple of different ways, and we're going to look at a couple of different ways uh, based, and that the different ways that it breaks up can align with different character roles, and that these roles show up over and over again. And these roles are going to end up aligning with character archetypes, and we're going to give those archetypes some names. And that the best way to understand this is through the lens of classical literature. And of course, when I'm talking about classical literature, what I mean is pop culture. Uh, Sing along if you know the words. This is from the theme song to the cartoon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And now that we've established roughly the level of discourse that we're going for, um, but you can see we have archetypes here. We have a leader, we have a brain, we have a loner, we have a party dude. But we want to get a little bit more rigorous than that. So if you've seen me present anything before, you should have a pretty good idea about how this goes. It's going to be fairly technical, kind of a framework, but also a little goofy. So I hope we can enjoy going on this ride together. Cool. Let's talk about roles. And I just want to take a moment to just pause and look at this pun because I'm really proud of it. Okay, moving on. So we're going to divide roles into a couple of different axes and look at how they function within a team along each of those axes. And the first one we're going to look at is this character driving or are they in a support role? So what do those words even mean? Okay, if we are driving, what we're talking about is a prominent character who is pulling the team forward. They're the ones that have the most agency within the group. They're making the most decisions within the group. And the overall arc of the team is going to be mostly influenced by one of these types of characters. This is a character that wants something. They are actively pursuing. These characters are also going to be sources of conflict because, again, they're pursuing, they want something. Now, on the support side, these are going to be your more secondary characters that enable others. You know, the drivers are really the lead engine of the train pulling the whole thing forward, and the support characters are the ones who are sitting on in front of the engine laying down track ahead as they go. These are characters who provide something. And instead of being sources of conflict, they're going to be more sources of aid or comfort. So this is our first axis. The second axis that we're going to look at is goals-oriented versus means-oriented. And like out of this entire presentation, this is like the hardest thing to get your head completely wrapped around. So I'm going to linger on this a little bit on what I mean versus goals and means. You can think of this as like ends versus means, goals versus processes. So what does a goals-oriented character want? A goals-oriented character is going to be focused on the question, where are we going? They're taking a long view. They're going to focus on what's valuable. And valuable here is a very loaded term. What I mean is something that literally has intrinsic value. The something is valuable if you're focused on it because it is worth having. This could be something abstract like love or family, or it could be something concrete like the treasure of the Sierra Madre or the Holy Grail. The important thing is that you don't want it because it will get you something. You want it because it is worth having. This is the character that sees the forest, not the trees. And this can be a source of conflict because those trees are actually kind of important. So when I talk about a means-oriented character on the other side of this, instead of asking the question, where are we going, they're going to ask the question, how do we get there? They're going to be very focused on what's right in front of their face. They're going to be focused on what's powerful. And again, this is a very loaded term. When I say powerful, what I'm talking about is something that is literally empowering, that enables you. Whereas the goals-oriented character is wanting something that is, you want because it's worth having. The means-oriented character wants something that enables you to get the things that you want. And they actually do pay a lot of attention to those trees. Okay, so we have our two different axes. And for those of you that have been through 8th grade biology, that means we're going to do some Punnett squares. We have two different axes, two different ends of each, so that gives us 4 different combinations. And we're going to look at each of these, talk about what their purpose is within the team, how that maps to certain recurring characteristics, and then we're going to go ahead and identify which Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle this is. And because I am told that they're like, I am in my 40s, but I'm told that most of you aren't. So we're also going to align these to Hogwarts Houses, and then we'll go through a whole bunch of examples and go from there. Okay, goals-oriented support. So this is a character that is providing something to the team that in order to help the team out, but goals-oriented meaning taking a long view, something that is intrinsically valuable. This is the character that represents what we're fighting for. This is the character you look at and you think of home or love or innocence. That's their purpose within the team. They're a reminder of what is important. So how does that translate into characteristics? This is the person that everyone likes. They're fun to be around. You want to please this person because they're just great. This could be someone that you associate with family. So this could be a love interest or a beloved child. This person is also typically associated with food and drink. So again, fun to be around. Everything about this person is just positive. If anybody is going to get kidnapped in Act 1, it is this character. Real quick, there is a question in the chat if I'm going to share the slides. I'm not planning to share the slides, but this presentation is going to be made available. A lot of the content is going to be it is not written down anywhere. So yeah, the presentation will be available. Okay, so what archetypal role is this? We're going to call this the heart. This is the heart of the team. If we did not have this person, the whole thing falls apart, even if they're not like necessarily doing a whole lot in terms of moving the team forward. Our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Michelangelo, obviously, and our Hogwarts house is Hufflepuff. Go Team Hufflepuff, represent. Okay, moving on to our means-oriented support. So once again, this is the secondary kind of character that is providing things to the team. And this one is more focused on process rather than outcomes. This character is providing some kind of strength. And this could be literal strength. This could be the muscle, but it's often a specific skill. So how does that translate into a characteristic? This character is respected because they can do something that nobody else can do. So unlike our Hufflepuff Michelangelo, this is somebody that people like, but they don't necessarily like want to spend time with. This is a character that can tends to be narrowly focused, which means you can have a lot of these on your team. If you've seen like Ocean's 11, like 8 or 9 of them were this role because these are people that, again, narrowly focused. They have their sphere that they operate extremely well in, but then that's what they do. Is just that. If somebody is going to die in Act 2, it's this person. Role. We're going to call this the fixer, but I do want to stress that there's a lot of different ways that this can manifest. So, Donatello was the brain. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert, our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Donatello. But this could also be the muscle. This could also be the mentor. So we're going to see a few different versions of this. The Hogwarts house is Ravenclaw. Okay, goal-oriented driving character. So this is a character that wants something, that is actively pursuing something, pulling the team forward. They have a long-term view, but are maybe blind to the individual steps. This character wants something. They don't care what they have to do to get it. This character is one that really closest aligns to what we think of as a traditional hero. When you think of a traditional hero journey, the character will, the first step of the hero journey is the hero wants something that they can't have, and is going to end up going on a journey to pursue it. So there's a lot of different ways that teams can function. You can have a team where everybody is really on equal footing, or you can have a team where you have, one person is in charge and then everybody else is their support characters. So, for that kind of setup, you're going to have a focus on this being your hero. This is the loner. They flout the rules. Again, they know what they want, and that is what they are focused on, really to the exclusion of everything else. This character is frequently going to have a little mini arc on learning the importance of teamwork. And this is actually really important because if you don't have this, You have a tendency to slide into tropes like toxic masculinity. Like loner characters who go off and do what they want are inherently attractive to us, but then they have to learn to work with the team. If a character gets in trouble in Act Two and like goes off on their own, but then has to like go on a spirit journey, then to come back, that's this person. We're going to call this role the Rogue. Our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Raphael, and our Hogwarts house is Gryffindor. And part of the way that this works with Gryffindor, because in the books, Gryffindor is really defined by their bravery more than anything else. Bravery is not intrinsically something that's tied into this rogue archetype, but the way that bravery is expressed in the Harry Potter books is almost always doing something in the face of authority, and that is very much a rogue kind of thing. All right, our last one, means-oriented drive. So once again, this is a character that is leading things along, pulling the team in a direction, having a lot of agency, but they're focused on process more than outcome. This person is ambitious. They want the team to be the best that it can be. This is frequently going to be a leader within the team. They're going to be focused on following rules and doing things the right and proper way. And again, similar with the means support, this can take a couple of different shapes because maybe what is the right and proper way is not actually right and proper. You know, your idea of doing things the right and proper way may mean that we stick up for the little guy no matter what. But it could also be, you know, the men are in charge because that's always the way it's been done. So because of that, this character tends to be either unambiguously good or really sketchy. This character will often have a mini arc about learning to see the big picture. If somebody betrays the team in Act 3, it is this person. Because, again, ambition. Ambition can make someone a great leader. It can also make someone a terrible person. We're going to call this archetype the manager. So, again, someone that can be leading, but also might just be telling everyone what to do. Our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Leonardo, and our Hogwarts house is Slytherin. And I like here that we have Leonardo, who's a good guy, paired with Slytherin, which is bad, because it really illustrates the dichotomy of this role. If you dig a little bit deeper into some of like the kind of behind the text stuff going on with the Harry Potter verse, Slytherin is the house where a lot of leaders come from. If you're going to be groomed for leadership, that is the house that you go to. The it's talked to the books talk about how that's the house for people that are cunning, and ambition is really tied to that. So again, just want to reiterate, ambition can make someone a great leader, and it can also make someone a terrible person. Okay, so I do want to do just a little quick side note here on managers versus rogues because they are the ones that are doing a lot of the driving within the team. And we're going to make this distinction as deliberately as I can. Rogues know what they want, but they don't know how to get it. Managers don't know what they want, but they're pretty convinced that they know the best way to do things. And this is a source of conflict. So, uh, as I've said a couple times here, teams can take a lot of different forms. You can have a team that only has one person in the driving seat, and maybe that person is a manager, maybe that person is a rogue. You can have a team that is just two people where one is a manager and one is a rogue. And there's lots of examples of that working. Lumiere and Cogsworth, Pierce and Honeycutt for people who are old enough to get that reference. So, okay, let's do some examples. We're actually going to do an awful lot of examples. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. So we have our Punnett squares, we have our heart, we have our fixer, manager, rogue by their powers combined, Captain Planet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, so let's start with Star Wars. It's it's in the title of this presentation. In fact, the title of the presentation gives it away where Luke is. He is our manager. And I'm talking specifically about the 1977 movie, not the entire series. We'll go into later a little bit of how things change over the course of the series. Um, he doesn't actually know what he wants when this movie starts out. I mean, he wants to get off Tatooine, but he also wants to like do right by his family, and he wants to transfer his application to the academy, but like to what end? Like you get the impression that he's doing that because that's the only way he knows to get off Tatooine. He wants to save the princess, but he doesn't actually want to leave. He's not ready to go off an adventure. The rogue is Han because I mean Han just wears a big old sign that says I am the rogue. The heart, at least for the first movie, is Leia, and we know this because she gets kidnapped in Act 1. And the fixer is basically everybody else. You know, Obi-Wan is the mentor, Chewie's the muscle, R2-D2 is a sonic screwdriver on wheels. They're there to fix problems. If you've got a problem, yo, they'll solve it. All right, crystal gems, sing along if you know the words. Garnet, amethyst, and pearl, and Stephen. This is an interesting one because these map really closely to these archetypes, but Stephen is the main character. He's the protagonist of the series. And uh, and so this really changes up the formula pretty interestingly, I think. Um, Even though he's not like in charge on any of their missions, he is definitely the focal point for the entire show. So something else that is going to come up is that you're going to see a lot of teams don't really map completely cleanly to this. You'll see a lot of variations, and that's good. So this is not proscriptive. This is descriptive. All right. Oh, Ghostbusters. You know, the one that started it off. Ray is the heart. I think about the childlike glee when he sees the pole, the fireman pole. Um, and that's yeah, he's the heart of the team there. Egon is the fixer. He's the one that makes the stuff and knows the science. Venkman is the rogue. Um, he's just kind of doing his own thing. He knows what he wants. He's not really too concerned about the best way to get it, and what he wants is Dana Barrett, which means our manager is nobody. Yeah, I wish I could say that Winston was here, but Winston is just such a criminally underdeveloped character in this movie that he's just I mean, there's a reason that he gets like cut out of the frame whenever they did the letterboxing for TV. So, and I say this as an Ernie Hudson fan. He was the best part of The Crow. Don't at me. Okay, Harry Potter. Harry Potter's an interesting case because Harry Potter and his cohort, his immediate circle of friends, they map really cleanly to this, as do the Hogwarts houses, but those don't map the same way. So Harry is definitely the rogue. He knows what he wants. He wants family. And really, he wants justice for what happened to his family. And that informs so much of his actions throughout the entire series of books. Ron is the heart. Ron represents family. Honestly, anybody named Weasley represents family in this series. And this actually becomes an interesting source of conflict between Ron and Harry because, Ron will complain about his family and Harry will be like, oh, at least you had a family. Hermione's the fixer. She's the one that's going to solve the problems. And our manager is also Hermione because when she's not doing the boys' homework for them, she is getting on them for breaking the rules. Uh, but this is, if anybody that has read the books, one of the first takeaways that you have is Why isn't Hermione in Ravenclaw again? And that's why, because the team archetypes are mapped onto these Hogwarts houses, but it's a necessity of the narrative that all of the main characters in the central team are in the same uh, are in the same house as Harry. So, ooh, let's do a big one. Fellowship of the Ring. Sam and Merry and Pippin, they are there to remind us of the Shire. Our fixers, Gandalf, Legolas, and Gimli. Again, they don't have a ton of growth. Gandalf obviously has his thing, which happens, largely off screen. Um, but they're there to solve problems. Aragorn is the rogue. He knows what he wants. He wants Arwen, and he will do whatever it takes to get her. If he has to become the king of both Gondor and Arnor, he'll do it. Frodo, also the rogue, and that shifts a bit over the course of the series, but over the arc of that set of books, he has a goal. He wants to destroy the ring, and he has no idea how to get it. And our manager is Boromir. All he wants is the strength to defend his people. And again, process, because the famous line, one does not simply walk into Mordor. That's something a manager would say. Okay, last example. I'm pretty sure. The Avengers. Well, the obvious ones, Iron Man is the rogue, Captain America is the manager. Hawkeye's the heart. Again, he gets kidnapped in Act 1. And the fixers. Black Widow, she is there to like solve problems in like a super spy kind of way. Hulk is the muscle, and Thor is also the muscle. Okay, that was a whole bunch of stuff. I'm gonna take a pause to take a sip of tea. You should do the same if you have tea. If you don't have tea, sip something else. So overall, the team is the character. So what does that mean? How do you arc a team? Well, we've got a couple of different ways that this can happen, and we're going to look at some examples. The first example here is to break them into sub-teams. So let's go back to our giant unwieldy team, Fellowship of the Ring. The Now, over the course of the entire Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship is only assembled for 1/6 of the book, like maybe even a little bit less than that, because we've got a whole bunch of heart characters, a whole bunch of fixers, and they almost immediately break up. And once they break up, then they start to take on different roles within their within their sub teams. So, once Sam, Frodo, and Gollum go off on their own, Frodo is definitely the rogue. He's definitely the one driving things, but not really knowing where he's going. Sam is the heart. Sam is there to remind us of the Shire. Sam's also doing double duty as the manager there because he's the one making sure that Frodo, eats food. And then Gollum is the fixer. He is their guide. He is solving problems. He's also a liability. That's definitely true. But his role is to provide that kind of support to the team. Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf. They're off doing their own thing, trying to save Merry and Pippin, and then that whole Battle of Pelennor Fields and all that stuff. Um, an interesting change that the movies made is that Aragorn, clearly our rogue. Legolas kind of steps into a managerial position in Two Towers in the movies because that way he and Aragorn can bicker a bit, source of conflict. And then Merry and Pippin and Treebeard. And once again, this is something that the movies do is Merry gets very much into the manager position. You're part of this world, aren't you? And Pippin starts to kind of grow into the rogue because again, in Two Towers specifically, he's the one that's like, oh, we should go south. That sounds like a terrible idea, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. And then the teams get all switched up again. Okay, shifting focus. So what I have here is some bullet point outline of steps, important steps in the hero's journey. Hero wants something but is unable to have it. Hero is compelled to leave, inciting incident. Hero goes on a quest. Hero must overcome obstacles and receive guidance, which is like, Act Two in its entirety. Then finally, hero grows, overcomes antagonist, achieves goal. There's your third act. The first 3 points are all Act One. A lot happens in Act One. So yeah, so you can have a situation where basically a different member of the team kind of takes point for different legs of this journey. And because we're talking about hero's journey, we're going to use Star Wars as an example. Because if ever there was a movie that just screams, I am a hero's journey, it's Star Wars. And this is another situation where Luke is definitely the protagonist, but he's still part of a team. So Luke is definitely going to go on a journey and a growth arc, but the team also does. All right, hero wants something but is unable to have it. This is our starting condition. This could be just the manager by himself. The very beginning is fairly Luke centric. Um, or if we have an unformed team, a lot of the time it makes sense to focus on the manager type person because again, this is frequently the leader. And this, if you're going to assemble the team, you generally start with your leader. Hero is compelled to leave. Uh, the focus, the focus over Act One, again, when Luke is introduced, it's a lot of focus on him, but then it shifts over to Leia. Even though she's not part of the team yet, it keeps cutting back to her to remind us that this is going on, that this is important. Again, this is the reason we fight. She got kidnapped in Act One. Hero goes on a quest to find it. And this is where the focus shifts to the rogue. This is where Han Solo swaggers into the movie 30 minutes late and takes it over. And again, this part of the hero's quest is the team is having to step out of their comfort zone and do new things and pursue a goal that they're totally not qualified to achieve. So this is the rogue's leg of the journey. We get into Act Two. The hero must overcome obstacles and receive guidance, and the focus is drawn to the fixer. Like once they get on the Death Star, they split into three different groups, and you've got one group that is Han and Luke and Chewie going to save Leia. And again, there's a fixer there. And the other two teams are nothing but fixers. But the real fixer drawing focus here is Obi-Wan because this entire sequence is setting itself up to culminate in his death. Now, the other characters are definitely active. They're definitely doing something, but uh, the main focus of this sequence is that the mentor, the sage, the person that knows what we're doing is going to die and leave everybody else kind of spinning their wheels. And then finally, Act Three, this is where the team comes together. And if you've seen any superhero movies, I should say any superhero team up movies, like the climax of the movie is always the team has to actually work as a cohesive unit, and that's a really satisfying resolution to those, or it can be in movies not called Fantastic Four, but but yes, so this is where Han has left, but then he comes back and he doesn't save the day, but he clears a path so Luke can save the day. And uh, cohesion. So another way to do this is internal conflict. So again, storytelling 101, you have a character, they have an external conflict, but they also have an internal conflict. And they have to resolve their internal conflict before they can resolve their external conflict. And this works in a team situation as well, because again, the team is the character. But instead of an internal conflict, the team has an interpersonal conflict. So, Act One, team forms. They form a temporary alliance in order to fight some larger threat. They're able to achieve some early victories by working together. Act Two, there is strife, usually between the rogue and the manager. There's a rift between the team, and then the antagonist has kind of leveled up, and attacks again, and this time the antagonist wins, and our hero team is left licking their wounds, but then they regroup and they, forgive each other, and maybe one of them is kidnapped, and so they got to go rescue that person, and they take the fight to the antagonist and they win. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 1989-ish, I forget the exact year, does a very simple, streamlined version of this. Whereas, the turtles, have some early victories, and then Leo and Raphael have a fight. Raph goes off on his own. He gets ambushed. He manages to like get back just in time to fall into a coma. The turtles like manage to escape, but they're definitely defeated. And then they heal up and they forgive each other, and then they go back and have basically the exact same fight that they lost in Act Two, but this time they win. If you want a really convoluted version of this, the Avengers movie, the first one, is nothing but heroes fighting other heroes. Like, Black Widow, she and Banner are fighting, not like physically fighting, but like, they pull a gun on her, or she pulls a gun on him, and then Iron Man and Thor are fighting, and then Captain comes in and like fights both of them, and then they're like, okay, okay, temporary alliance, will come back together, and then they just bicker a whole bunch, and then Hawkeye comes in and he attacks everybody, and then Hulk attacks everybody, and then they finally overcome their differences and spend the last 20 minutes throwing a punching party, and it's spectacular. Changing roles. So this is something that you can definitely be thinking about if you have like a long running work where you want to have, you have sequels that have the same cast, but you want characters to grow and change over time. And so, find ways for them to still be in the team, but to have different roles within the team to reflect the way that they've changed. Again, I talked about in the Avengers, Iron Man is definitely the rogue, Captain America definitely the manager. Several movies later, by the time you get to Captain America Civil War, Iron Man is the manager and Captain America is the rogue. Iron Man has spent several movies like making hasty decisions and totally regretting how those have turned out. And by the time of Civil War, he has retired. He is the Avengers landlord at that point. Meanwhile, Captain America has spent several movies being continuously disillusioned by these institutions that he had so much faith in. And so he is now focused on doing the right thing in the face of authority, and has become full on rogue by the end of that movie. Oh, let's do the Star Wars version. Again, Han is the rogue, Leia is the heart, Luke is the manager in the 1977 Star Wars movie. By the time we get to Empire Strikes Back, Han is now the fixer. He is the one getting them out of trouble. He is, literally fixing his ship. Leia is the one very focused on following procedure, following the rules, doing things the safe way in many ways. And Luke has gone rogue. I mean, he's again literally gone off on his own. But even then, like he quits his training early to go back and save his friends. And then by the time you get to Return of the Jedi, Han is now managing things. He has a team underneath him. Leia is the one solving problems. She's the one who figures out how to talk to Wicket, and Luke is still the rogue. That's two movies in a row where he like walks into the bad guy's lair without any clue of how to get out. So, uh, and I mean at the end, at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, he walks into the bad guy's lair, but he has a plan. But the end, he did not have a plan. Okay, so we have these archetypes. What do you do with them? Well, archetypes are useful. And there are a lot of things that you can do with them if you're using them in your own prose. The first, obviously, is just steal them. If you have a shorter work that is, you want to have a team, but you don't want to spend an awful lot of space like defining their backstories, like you can lean into that archetype. He's like, okay, oh nope, this one is a brain. We know how that works. This one is a rogue leader. We know how that works. Uh, yeah, that's what archetypes are for. The other thing that archetypes are really good for is like as a starting point. So, and I've used this in my own work. You are like, I know I'm going to need a team, so I'm going to borrow these archetypes for roles, but then I'm going to use those archetypes as the basis for character, and then just kind of build off of that. You can subvert them. You can use this to say, aha, I hate formula. Now that I know what this is, I will go out of my way to avoid doing it. And you know what? That is awesome. Do that. You can diagnose with them. Do you have a team story that just doesn't feel like it's working? Maybe you have, all managers. Maybe you have uh, two rogues and no heart. Um, So maybe this could be useful to like look at the roles that they're functioning in and see if you've got something doing double duty that doesn't need to be. And of course, again, I want to reiterate this is squishy. A lot of the examples we've covered don't cleanly fit into this. Uh, okay, we have reached the obligatory log rolling slide. This is where you can find me. Um, I my website right now this year I am blogging about some of my favorite childhood movies. So if that is an exciting thing to you, you can see that there. This last week's was Flight of the Navigator and Transformers the movie. And now that we have reached the end, we have about 9 minutes left. Once again, Swooperton B is where we are looking for questions. Does anybody have questions? See somebody in the chat saying that they've been saying for years that Steve Rogers is a Slytherin. I'm I am glad to have vindicated you. Uh, Ice Cactus saying this was a good presentation. Thank you, thank you. I've worked very hard on it. I hope it has been helpful. I do want to reiterate, it is entirely possible. I am entirely full of crap, but if this is useful to you, then it is useful. Is there any one archetype that truly cannot be removed from a story without breaking it? There is not one, but you do need somebody driving. So you need either a rogue or a manager, because those are the ones that really have agency. Have I read The Heroine's Journey? Makes similar points. I have not. Who is that by? Heroine's Journey. I will have to. I've not even heard of that book. I will have to check that one out. Can a team succeed with multiple rogues managers? Um, I mean, the short version is anything can work if you can make it work. I can't think of any really great examples, but um, you know, like Aragorn and Frodo in Lord of the Rings are both rogues, but they're also only on the same team for a very short span. I would think that if you had a couple of rogues like that were really wanting to go in different ways, you could make that work. Or similarly, if you had, a couple of managers that had very different ideas about what was correct, that could be that like you could make that work in order to make them distinct. Whether or not that translates into compelling drama, like I said, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done. Execution is everything. Is there a particular format that works for a longer series versus a trilogy with regards to changing roles, or is it based on character arcs? Um, that that is an excellent question. Um, I think, and this is something you see in like TV series, is uh, that you'll have like individual installments will really focus like do a deep dive on like one or two characters, or maybe even like two or three characters, and So it does that kind of shift focus thing or break up into subteams thing, but on a very extreme scale, where like this episode, we're just going to look at these three, and everybody else is that they're in the background, but they're just like running B stories and doing comic relief. Um, so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Oh, we have an answer to my question. The Heroine's Journey is by Gail Carriger. Excellent. Um, Worth checking out. We've got about 5 minutes left. Are there more questions? I don't do impressions. Um, you've heard me do impressions now, and they were terrible. So I see typing in the chat. See what comes up. Um, while people are typing, quick, on the topic of problematic creators, one of the things that is amusing to think about is because we talked about the Avengers. Um, Joss Whedon kind of made a name for himself for identifying the heart character and killing them in Act Three. He did this in a lot of different properties, and so like by the time we got to Avengers: Age of Ultron, and he basically spends 30 minutes teasing that Hawkeye is going to get killed. It was a brilliant bit of misdirection. Spoilers for Age of Ultron. What are some pitfalls or archetypes and tips on avoiding stereotypes? Such as if the heart is a woman, that seems problematic. If she's always the one being kidnapped in Act One. Yes, that is definitely true. Uh, and this is kind of the difference between an archetype and a stereotype. Like archetypes are generally good and can be useful, um, but you still have to flesh out the character and make them into a real person. And giving them agency and goals and personal things that they want to achieve can go a long way towards helping that. And also identifying these kind of these tropes, like I would not recommend having your heart character be kidnapped in Act One because it's been done so much. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with that character. I brought up Steven Universe. That is that is a heart character that really has a central role in those stories, and it's not because he's getting kidnapped. Only a rogue or a manager can lead, correct? There are no iterations of other archetypes leading. Again, I just kind of brought up Steven Universe. Um, as with everything, this is kind of a framework, but it's also based on what's out there. I'm sure there are more examples of things that subvert this exactly. Um, I was uh, I I picked a lot of low-hanging fruit with this presentation. Um, so yeah, you could definitely have something where someone else leads. You could tell a Harry Potter story where Hermione is the one that's really driving the action. So let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to come up with other examples of someone other than the rogue and the manager leading. Um, uh, I'll keep thinking on it, and if anybody else has something, please bring it up in the chat. Thank you for all of the TMNT references. I grew up with these movies. You're quite welcome. I did as well. Have you ever considered breaking down groups of villains the same way? Um, an early version of this did have some of that, but that was, I I don't have any of that information at my fingertips. Um, but yeah, I imagine you could definitely do it because specifically the manager is one that can very easily be turned into a villain. Well, there are villainous sides to all of these, but that requires a bit more digging. And we're almost at time as it is. If the fixer starts to become the protagonist, doesn't their role shift to rogue manager? I mean, it could. Um, and again, these are squishy. So what I see as the fixer, somebody else might see as something else. somebody on Twitter was like, okay, maybe Luke Skywalker is a Slytherin, but Leia is definitely a Gryffindor. And at no point would I call Leia a Gryffindor, but that's my experience of these works. The first rule of writing advice is your mileage may vary. So, uh, okay. Well, thank you for your questions. We are at time, so I'm going to close this out. Once again, I have been Kurt Pankow. Thank you for attending, and thank you for Flights of Foundry for putting on this, and I hope the rest of you have a good rest of your con. Thank you.